Claressa Shields is a 5-division world champion. Claressa Shields is the loudest voice in women's boxing. And the fighter, according to the tape making the entire internet flinch tonight, might be the biggest walking illusion the sport has ever tried to sell you. By the time you finish this video, you will not look at Claressa Shields the same way. You will not look at Papoose the same way. And you will not look at that pretty little power couple photo shoot the same way ever again. Because a receipt just crawled out from under the rug, and honey, it is not the receipt anybody in Claressa Shields' camp wanted the world to hold in its hand. Before we crack this open, do me one quick favor. If messy, layered, receipt-heavy breakdowns are your thing, tap that like, hammer that subscribe, and send this to the one friend who has been screaming about Claressa Shields and Papoose for weeks. Everything you are about to hear is built on publicly available statements, public interviews, and public commentary from people who chose to speak on the record. Nobody is guessing. Nobody is inventing. We are just reading the room out loud. Now let me set the stage, because this is where most people get it twisted. For years, we were handed a very clean fairy tale. Claressa Shields, undefeated, unbothered, the greatest woman in boxing. Papoose, quiet, loyal, still visibly attached to a 15-year marriage that never actually died on paper. Two black icons, two big-name careers, one glossy magazine shot after another. Real love, real power, real unity, right? That was the pitch. That was the wrapping paper. Then Charleston White sat down, opened his mouth, and pulled the wrapping paper clean off the box. And what was inside the box, sweetheart, was not a love story. It looked, sounded, and smelled a whole lot more like a business arrangement wearing a wedding ring-shaped disguise. And once you see it, you cannot unsee it. Charleston White did not scream. Charleston White did not throw slurs. Charleston White did not do a viral ragebait rant. He did something far more dangerous. He asked a calm, quiet, surgical question that the entire internet has been too polite to ask on camera. What if the Claressa Shields and Papoose relationship was never really love at all? What if the fame, the photos, the podcast circuit, the matching outfits, the entire Black Power couple branding was actually strategy stacked on top of strategy? And what if the reason Papoose has stayed almost completely silent through every wave of drama is because the silence itself is the whole play? Let me start with the part that unsettled me the most. Charleston White brought up something I had honestly forgotten. He said he remembered watching a young Claressa Shields on television years before she ever became this polished 5-division champion. Back then, in his words, Claressa Shields was rough. Claressa Shields had a temper. Claressa Shields was, and this is the exact framing he used, a tomboy with anger issues who was not ladylike at all. Then he made the observation that stopped the room. He said Claressa Shields did not stay that way. She got shaped. She got corrected. She got molded. She got softened, sanded down, and reintroduced to the world as the version of Claressa Shields the sport could actually market on a billboard. Now hold on. Before we get too comfortable agreeing with that read, we have to be honest. Because that framing has a very obvious flaw baked into it, and if you do not catch it, you are letting a slick argument walk right past you. Claressa Shields did not win 5 world titles across 5 weight classes on branding. Claressa Shields did not win 2 Olympic gold medals on marketing. Claressa Shields did not become the undisputed anything on a good publicist. That woman earned it punch by punch, round by round, in gyms where the lights barely worked. So Charleston White can talk about polish all he wants. The talent underneath the polish is real, and nobody in their right mind should try to erase that. But, and this is the but that matters, if the fighter is real and the polish is real and the product is real, then the brand around Claressa Shields also has to be protected. And a brand that has to be protected at all costs, honey, cannot afford to be tied to chaos. That is the door Charleston White just kicked open. Here comes the first receipt, and it is a heavy one. As of this moment, Papoose is not divorced. Not almost divorced. Not the paperwork is on the way. Not divorced. According to public reports, Papoose only officially filed for divorce from Remy Ma in the last stretch of 2025, and multiple outlets have made it clear that as of right now, that divorce is not legally finalized. Meanwhile, on the other side of the timeline, Claressa Shields is on national platforms telling the world she is planning babies with Papoose. She is talking about pregnancy years. She is dropping hints about the gender she wants. She is out here putting a due date on a life she is going to build with a man whose signature is still on somebody else's marriage certificate. Read that again slowly. She is planning children with a man who is, on paper, still a husband. That is not a rumor. That is the timeline. That is the record. That is the receipt. So when Charleston White asked the question the internet has been dancing around, was this ever love or was this always positioning, image and alignment, you cannot just wave it off. Because real love does not need this much choreography. Real love does not need this much managed silence. Real love does not need a marketing plan attached to the sonogram. And the gotcha moment nobody wants to say out loud is this. If the Claressa Shields and Papoose story is genuine, then why is every hard question about it treated like a threat? Why is the door always locked? Why does every uncomfortable follow-up get rerouted? Why does a relationship this authentic require this much crowd control? Now, I have to pump the brakes here, because Charleston White did something in his breakdown that I refuse to co-sign. He started speculating about what the future children of Claressa Shields and Papoose would look like. Their skin, their hair, their heritage, all of it. That has absolutely nothing to do with the argument. That is not analysis. That is a distraction. So I am leaving that piece where I found it, and I am not amplifying it. But the core question underneath, the love or strategy question, still deserves an answer because what he said next is where this whole thing turns. Because when Charleston White pivoted to Papoose himself, he pointed out something you truly cannot unhear once you hear it. You have never, not once, heard a woman come forward publicly and drag Papoose. Not a former flame. Not a scorned ex. Not an angry situationship. Not one. Charleston White called Papoose a man of silence. He said Papoose barely speaks in public, so when Papoose does speak, the words carry real weight. He pointed out that Papoose stood by Remy Ma the entire time Remy Ma was locked up. He noted that Papoose has now been publicly linked to two very successful, very independent women, and in both cases those women seem to have grown, glowed, and leveled up. On paper, that sounds like the definition of loyalty. On paper, that sounds like the good guy. On paper, that sounds like the exact opposite of a red flag. But here is where Charleston White's read gets uncomfortable. Because he did not stop at Papoose is loyal. He flipped it. He suggested that Papoose says almost nothing, and yet somehow controls almost everything. He suggested that the silence is not innocence. He suggested the silence is the strategy. And that is where you have to pause and ask the honest question, because I refuse to pretend this is simple. Is that silence really loyalty? Or is that silence just control wearing loyalty's outfit? Because those two things can look identical from the outside, and only one of them is love. Follow the money, sweetheart, because the money will always tell you which one you are actually looking at. Somebody, of course, asked Charleston White the obvious question. Claressa Shields makes more money than Papoose. So is Papoose a gold digger? And his answer was sharper than most people were ready for. He said a player is never a gold digger because a player is not chasing crumbs. A player is playing for the entire bank. Then he leaned on some old-school family wisdom. He said his grandmother used to tell him, if a woman truly likes you, there is nothing she will not do for you. And how do you know she truly likes you? She hands you her money. Cold. Clinical. Old school. Uncomfortable. But listen, whether you agree with the framing or not, the receipts on the ground are impossible to ignore. Receipt number 1. Claressa Shields, on the record, earns more than Papoose. Nobody is disputing that. This is the exact same financial dynamic Papoose had with Remy Ma. Same architecture, different woman. Receipt number 2. According to public commentary from people close to the situation, Papoose reportedly has meaningful access to the resources, the accounts, the flow, the operation. Not hearsay from strangers. Public discussion again and again. Receipt number 3, and this is the loudest one, there is no visible friction. None. No public arguments. No public boundaries. No public, he stays out of my business, I stay out of his. When a man has that level of access to that much of a woman's life with zero visible resistance in the room, that is not romance running the household. That is somebody with the keys. And the person with the keys, sweetheart, is the person with the power. Now, is Charleston White's player over gold digger logic actually smart? Or is it just a shiny gift wrap for letting a grown man skip accountability? That is your call to make in the comments, and I want to see that fight in the comment section tonight. But the second you start asking that question about Papoose, you cannot avoid asking the bigger question about the woman who used to hold that same seat. Because if Papoose is the quiet architect and Claressa Shields is the current product, then Remy Ma is the exhibit the whole system has been trying not to talk about. Charleston White's whole read on Remy Ma was not romantic. It was structural. He argued that Papoose was the quiet backbone, the calm hand on the wheel, the invisible strategist keeping the machine running while Remy Ma ran point on the noise, the stage, and the spotlight. In that frame, the silence was never accidental. The silence was the entire operating system. And the moment you accept that frame, the current Claressa Shields chapter starts looking less like a new love story and more like an updated version of the same blueprint. Same silence. Same access. Same money flow. New face on the poster. Charleston White also pushed the idea that carefully managed public images do not just describe a relationship. They build one. In his read, the Papoose is the perfect man narrative was never a natural conclusion. It was a carefully constructed identity, protected by people around him and reinforced by every soft interview that never dared to ask a real question. And any critic who tried to poke a hole in that story would usually get dismissed, mocked, or called a hater, which of course only fed the algorithm and made the myth grow louder. That is not new. That is how brand protection works in modern celebrity. What is new is somebody with Charleston White's audience pointing at it and calling it by name. And this is where it gets sneaky because most people watching this at home have already been trained not to see it. Think about how the Papoose story has been sold for the last decade. The devoted husband. The barre rapper who never chased fame. The unbothered man who never needed the spotlight. Every single one of those images is designed to make you lower your guard. Every single one of those images is designed to make you feel safe. And a system that trains you to feel safe around a specific man is a system that has a very good reason for not wanting you to look too closely. Charleston White is not calling Papoose a monster. Charleston White is asking a simpler and scarier question. What if Papoose is not the man being loved? What if Papoose is the man being positioned? And more importantly, what if Papoose is the one doing the positioning? And this is where Remy Ma becomes the ghost in the room. Because according to Charleston White's whole theory, Remy Ma is the one variable this entire silent system could never fully control. Remy Ma makes her own money. Remy Ma has her own audience. Remy Ma has her own voice. Remy Ma does not sanitize her conflict for public consumption. Remy Ma says the loud part out loud. And when a system built on silence collides headfirst with a woman who refuses to be quiet, it does not argue with her, it does not negotiate with her, it just tries to quietly remove her from the frame. And that, sweetheart, is the exact moment a relationship stops looking emotional and starts looking procedural. Think about it. Remy Ma married Papoose over the phone from a prison cell. Remy Ma held that man down through a 6-year bid when most of the world would have walked. Remy Ma spent 15 years attached to Papoose. There is a tattoo. There is a daughter. There is a shared career resurrection. There is public loyalty on record, in interviews, in lyrics, in tears, in real ink on real skin. That is not a subtweet. That is a life. And now, while that same divorce is still crawling through the system, Claressa Shields is on podcasts telling the world she is planning babies with the same man. If that does not make the hair on your arm stand up a little, I do not know what will. Charleston White framed Remy Ma's near-total silence in this current chapter as a very loud silence. Not the silence of somebody who lost. Not the silence of somebody who is hiding. The silence of somebody who already said everything worth saying, and who is now simply waiting for the world to catch up to what she already knows. 15 years of receipts. Prison loyalty on record. Tattoos still on the skin. A divorce still not finalized. Claressa Shields planning children in the meantime. Remy Ma might be the quietest name in this entire story. And yet, somehow, Remy Ma is still the loudest presence in the room. And every time Claressa Shields opens her mouth about baby plans on national radio, Remy Ma's silence hits harder than any diss track Remy Ma could actually drop. That is the part Claressa Shields cannot outbox. So let me ask the question straight, no chaser. Is this a genuine, once-in-a-lifetime love story between Claressa Shields and Papoose? Or has this always been a very well-lit business arrangement dressed up in couple energy? Is Papoose actually one of the most loyal men in the culture? Or is Papoose simply the smartest quiet operator in the entire game? Someone who knows exactly how to sit still while somebody else's brand pays the bills? And is Claressa Shields the empowered, in-control queen we keep being told she is? Or is Claressa Shields the newest, shiniest asset inside a system she may not fully see yet, because she is standing too close to it? Look at the picture from 10 feet back and it starts to click. Claressa Shields, the fighter, is real. That never changes. The 5 titles are real. The Olympic gold is real. The fan base is real. But everything around Claressa Shields, the polished quotes, the softened persona, the managed messaging, the perfectly timed engagement chatter, the sudden family planning conversation while a divorce still is not signed, all of that starts to look less like organic love and more like a well-produced season of a very expensive television show. And every good television show, sweetheart, needs a very quiet executive producer sitting somewhere off camera, making sure the story stays on script. Charleston White is basically standing up in the middle of the studio audience, pointing at that empty producer chair and saying, "That seat is not empty. Look who is sitting in it." Now, is Charleston White always right? Absolutely not. Charleston White has said plenty of things that deserve to be dragged, and I already told you where I refuse to follow him on those baby comments. But being wrong on one lane does not mean being wrong on every lane. And on this specific breakdown, on this specific question, about this specific relationship, the receipts he pointed at are actually sitting on the table in front of us. Undisputed divorce not finalized. Public baby planning already announced. Financial dynamic mirroring a previous 15-year marriage. A silent man with reported access. A loud woman being repositioned as the calm one. That is not conspiracy. That is a pattern. And in this culture, patterns are the closest thing we ever get to a confession. And let me give you one more thing to sit with, because it is the piece Charleston White almost buried in the middle of his own rant. He pointed out that, in this whole conversation, Claressa Shields has done the majority of the talking. She has done the interviews. She has dropped the baby plans on the radio. She has been the one addressing the rumors, denying the engagement, then implying the engagement, then reintroducing the engagement, all on her own timeline. Meanwhile, Papoose has said almost nothing of substance. And every time the pressure builds, guess who steps back in front of the microphone to defend the couple? Not Papoose. Claressa Shields. Every single time. That is not partnership speaking. That is one voice carrying a 2-person operation, and the other person collecting the benefits of a story he is barely narrating. If that is love, it is a very lopsided love. If it is business, it is a masterclass. Here is the part that keeps me up. Claressa Shields deserves to be in love. Claressa Shields deserves peace. Claressa Shields deserves a family and a life outside the ring. Nobody in their right mind should want anything less for a woman who has given that much of her body to that much of a sport. But love is not supposed to arrive on a spreadsheet. Love is not supposed to be timed to an album cycle. Love is not supposed to require a public relations rollout. And love, especially love strong enough to bring children into the world, is definitely not supposed to be announced before somebody else's divorce paperwork is even done drying. That is not romance. That is scheduling. And when a relationship starts looking like a scheduling document, honey, it stops being a bedroom conversation and starts being a boardroom decision. So the real question, the one Charleston White quietly slid onto the table and then walked away from, is not who is right and who is wrong. The real question is, who is actually in control of the Claressa Shields story right now? Because if Claressa Shields is fully in control, then the babies, the timeline, the podcast confessions, and the wide-open silence from Papoose are all her call, and she is choosing every second of it. But if she is not fully in control, if a piece of this narrative is being shaped by somebody else's plan, somebody else's timing, somebody else's benefit, then this is not the underdog fairy tale we have been sold. This is a rebranding. And the person driving the rebrand is almost never the person whose name is on the poster. Look, I am not asking you to hate anybody tonight. I am not asking you to cancel Claressa Shields. I am not asking you to burn Papoose at the stake. I am not asking you to sanctify Remy Ma. I am asking you to do the one thing modern celebrity culture almost never wants you to do. I am asking you to look at the pattern, not the picture. Look at the timeline, not the caption. Look at the silence, not the smile. Because that is where every real answer in this story has been hiding the whole time. And when you finally look at it with clear eyes, you understand exactly why this Charleston White clip refuses to die on the timeline. It is not because he screamed. It is because for one uncomfortable minute, he stopped screaming, and he asked the calm question the entire internet had been avoiding. So here is where I hand it to you, because this one honestly has to be a group decision. Team Real Love in one corner. Team Business Arrangement in the other. And in the third corner, the corner nobody wants to sit in, Team. It started real and turned into something else. Tell me in the comments which corner you are in tonight, and be specific. If you think Claressa Shields and Papoose are the real thing, tell me why the timing does not bother you. If you think this is strategy, tell me exactly which receipt sold you. And if you think Remy Ma is the one holding the whole truth in her pocket, tell me what you think she is waiting to say. I read every comment, and I bring the best ones into the next video, so do not hold back tonight. Before you go, one last thing, because this story is not finished. There are already more clips circulating of Claressa Shields being asked follow-up questions on this exact situation. And if you thought the baby planning quote was the loudest moment, wait until you hear how she has been handling the Remy Ma comparisons behind the scenes. Wait until you hear what a certain radio show caller sounded like when they called in to defend Claressa Shields. And wait until you find out who people are accusing that caller of actually being. That is a full separate video, and I am dropping it next. So do yourself a favor. Tap that subscribe, hit the notification bell, and stay locked in, because the Claressa Shields, Papoose, and Remy Ma story is not slowing down. It is only just starting to spill. And when the next receipt drops, sweetheart, you already know where to be. The tea is hot. The cup is full. And on this channel, we never, ever water it down.